Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a great day. I was just thinking about how important attitude is. Because we could be out here in this world and we could have everything we want and need. If we have a bad attitude, it's just wasted. And you could be out here and you could have absolutely nothing. If you have a good attitude, man, you're free. You know what I mean? A good attitude will free a person. It's like, how do you find that good attitude, right? I have always had an ability to, master having a good attitude by practicing, mindfulness and stuff. But as time goes on, things like, certain practices like mindfulness and other walking meditations, but it only goes so far. You need a deep, internal, tonic. And that I have found through a direct channel to God through Jesus. That really is the thing that solidifies your attitude. Because when you do that, you have no skeleton. There's no skeletons in your closet that traumatize you, will terrorize you in the quiet of your own thoughts. And if that's the case, then you're just having fun all the time. Just going this way and that way. And, the only responsibility you have is either to save your money or just don't spend too much of it while you're replanting yourself. I'm talking about myself. But, yeah, just attitude. And over the years, I've always tried to really hone in on what I am good at in the workplace. What is it that allows me to be successful in the way that I am successful? The way that I'm successful is what draws in all the people that fucking hate me. Because I am so fun-loving and carefree, really. But I'm effective in what I do, and it brings hate from the people who are all around me because they try really, really hard to do things that I make look very easy and I make look fun. And people just can't stand it. But what is that, right? And then it's putting that together with attitude. How do you train attitude, right? How do you train attitude? When do you start training attitude? When is the proper time to hone in on, the educational aspect of attitude? My mom used to do this BABES program, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but basically she was teaching emotional intelligence to first and second graders. And as I do think that that's cool, I think that the approach that I would take is rather than emotional intelligence, I would focus on emotional management, and which is through attitude, through utilizing the power of attitude. And I would focus on teaching that to children, and then allowing them to go through their own journeys in life, but having strong reinforcement on emotional management, right? Which means speaking up when you need to speak up, and then managing your own business when you need to manage your own business. You know what I mean? Through the channels of emotional management, I think that we can have a lot more of an effect on our children in a positive way than the routes that we're taking right now. And I don't think that it takes a lot of money to do that. I think it takes just a cultural shift in the eyes of our educators. From one of victimization to one of control, or one of self-control, I should say. Victimization puts people inside of a system of therapy. Well, it's not even that. It's more broad than that. It puts people inside of a perspective of victimhood, of this is what happened to me. This is, it's very reactive. But if we were to take a stance of emotional management and emotional management, it shows kids that the system is inside their own head. If they can manage their emotions through the seasons of life, that's the trick. Because no one's going to stop the world from making you a victim, right? That's just going to happen. Everybody's a victim at some point in life. But it's not about that. It's not about being a victim. It's about managing your emotions through the times you're a victim so that you can move forward from it. Because that's what it's about. if we're always looking at our traumas and stuff, we're already behind. So that's something that maybe our current generations need to continue doing, but with the younger kids who haven't experienced a lot of the traumas yet, don't have those baggages, we should just switch gears and go full force into just education on emotional management, teaching kids about how they work, how their emotions work, and be setting a standard for them. Not to be robots at all, but to manage their emotions, you know what I mean? And to understand that everything is okay. Sorry, I'm smoking. Need to quit. But, and I really think that for the rest of my life, I would love the opportunity to be able to coach kids in that type of way. And I'm not sure if it would be for me to start this into a company, right? I'm not sure if it's something that I should start as a one-on-one thing. I don't think that's the trick. I think if I were to get started from where I'm at with the ethos that I'm using, right, which is my experience in life, then I think I would have to go down more of a public route. I don't know. I need to be able to sell this idea. So it's gotta be a good idea. But it's how do I make enough money off of it to be able to live while I pursue my dream? Of teaching these kind of emotional management, emotional intelligence, stuff to the kids who need it. Encourage, motivate, and be a guiding light, be a light, you know what I mean? Because sometimes that's all it takes for people to get through this season or that season, But if we can teach attitude, then they can take that with them, And then how do I root myself in a way to where when I begin to take on the negative forces that are inside of these institutions already, the ambitious, lazy people who've gotten themselves inside of the, educational administrations across the country and do nothing but selfish endeavors, but don't realize that that's what they're doing because they've just been doing it for so long. Maybe that's what they were taught. Those people need to go. They need to go. We need a competency-based hierarchy again inside of our main institutions. Education is one. And it needs to be separated from religion, 100%. And I'm a big believer in Jesus. However, there is a separation between spirit and body. And education needs to be about the earth, it needs to be about the body. But there is an emphasis on attitude, and there's an emphasis on emotion regulation, emotional management. And that aspect is the spiritual aspect of education. Viktor Frankl wrote this book called The Doctor and the Soul, From Psychotherapy to Logotherapy, and he was talking, and he talks actually pretty at length. I know it's an older book, but he talks at length about how psychotherapy is the ministry of the agnostic or the atheist. Yeah, probably more the atheist. I think this was the atheist. And I think that's so true. And so how do you combine spirit into an educational system which needs to be based on, tangible evidence, right? How do you teach those things? And I think that's through the spiritual aspects that just naturally come along with attitude. Because if you talk about attitude, then you get into spiritual principles, which you don't have to call spiritual principles, even though you could. And those are things like honesty, truth, perseverance. There's a lot of them. But you get into those kind of things, which is like ethics and philosophy. And if we put that back into our educational system, then we can nurture the people's spirits, Because for the past 100 years, we've focused so much on just the material, and we've really gotten rid of a lot of the spiritual aspects of school, which, again, are philosophy and psychology, and talking about attitude, and talking about principles to live by, what is good and what is not good, talking about those things. You don't need the Bible to talk about those things. But the best, the good, right? The good, and is rooted in the idea. There is naturally a correlation that can be drawn from the story of Jesus and Jesus to the highest achievements of man in the most positive way. Because if you really look at those things honestly, those are moral things. Those are internal qualities. They're not, hustle, grind culture. That's not the highest achievement of man. The highest achievement of man is internal things. Is sacrifice. And there's a much higher quality of life that comes along with that, and it's a lot longer lasting. And so that I say that to say you don't have to put Jesus in the classroom in order to talk about Jesus per se. You just talk about attitudinal values, creative values, experiential values, which is another one of Viktor Frankl's ideas. You talk about all of that kind of stuff, which is psychology. It's philosophy. These are things that our society is hammered on over and over and over and over again. Certain aspects of history can even be considered that, like the immortalized figures of time, like Alexander the Great, Thutmose the Fourth, Thutmose the Third, I think, Thutmose the Great, the pharaoh from long ago. Ramses, like these immortalized characters who our society has been just gone over their stories over and over and over again. Those become more like folklore of mankind, and in a way to where it's like our society today didn't create these stories, but my perspective that I have on my life and on the world is a filter. So when I look at these ancient stories, I create like almost my own modern day folklore of who these people are and how their stories line up with my life, things they've gone through, I've gone through. And in that way, I'm not just lining myself up with that dude, I'm lining myself up with all of the millions of people who have done the same exact thing. Look at their lives and compare it to these great figures over and over again, and through time have rewritten these biographies. So by the time it gets to me, I am witnessing millions of people do exactly the same thing as me, right? When I read a Julius Caesar biography, millions of people have gone over Julius Caesar's life and rewritten down what it is, because it's fascinating and super. A man can, or somebody with that kind of ambition, and a person can really find similarities in aspects of the story, and that's very important. But it's not just the figure. Again, it's identifying with a very human thing that comes along with our desire to look out and find more, our desire to, look up into the stars and see ourselves, and, please have all of this mean something, that's where all that comes from. Anyway, end rant. But I got, I'm in this to win this. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I'm gonna make something that's gonna really, really make a difference. Because what the hell else am I doing here? And it's like, there is no other option but for me to just hit the fucking gas. There's no other option. Because anywhere I go, I'm just gonna get the same exact thing. People hate me because I'm just chilling. And I don't want to be arrogant and even say it, but so I'm not. But everywhere I go, it's always the same thing. I can go in and not say a word, and the rumors will start themselves. It's just about something. I can take on all the work myself, and everybody will sit back, not do anything, and just talk about, man, this guy doesn't do nothing. Like every time, dude. It's been the last 4 or 5 jobs I've had. It's the same thing. I'm not young anymore. Like I can't shrink myself. It's miserable to do that. I'd rather live free. But anyway, I know this is all about me, but maybe you guys.